good.
Ready?
We're live.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hey, it's Wild Josh from Geek-Cetera, and I'm joined by Chase, Kyle, and Ezra. And today we have a very special Thursday live stream. Yay, welcome to our Thursday live stream. We all had the day off, so we figured we would do this as a little extra content kind of thing for the week. And today we're going to be talking about the world of science fiction and how it's given us many different types of time travel. And we're going to sit down and discuss the different types of time travel across many different sci-fi series. Now, let's get geeky.
You don't really need a pause here.
So we're going to...
Oh, yeah.
I was pausing in my mind because we usually... Anyways.
Roll the intro. Nope.
I'm going to roll it over to Chase, who is going to intro or go over this topic for us.
All right, so the reason that I kind of had this idea in my head to go for this topic was I was watching the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So without going spoilers into it, in case you guys don't know, it involves time travel. And one of the characters describes time travel as, a river. And so if you have a river that's coming down from the top of a mountain to a lake at the bottom, if you throw one stick into that river, is all the water still going to end up at the bottom?
I don't understand that. What?
So if you
just blew our minds.
If you have a river and it's flowing from the top of a mountain to a lake at the bottom, if you're standing halfway down the river and you throw a stick into the river, is all of the water from the top of the mountain still going to make it to the lake at the bottom?
Oh, okay.
Is that stick at all?
Chase, because the stick is going to float, and all the water is going to be underneath the stick.
Disagree.
You don't agree, Ez? Why don't you agree?
No, you said all the water.
All of the water.
If the stick is thrown, it's going to splash some of the water onto the ground.
If you
next
place
to
the stick gently into the river, Extra.
Nope. You said thrown and all of the water.
It's
therefore,
it's heavy semantics. I
disagree because it has an impact.
If you gently place the stick into, all of the water is still going to end up at the bottom.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's just mildly displaced, but it all still ends up there. But
it might end up there a little later than it normally would have, but it will still end up there.
It still ends up there. But now, say you're a beaver, and you put millions of sticks in this river, and you build a dam. Is all of the water still going to end up at the bottom? No.
It'll end somewhere.
It will end somewhere, but it's no longer at the final location. So it's basically just the idea of, they call it the time stream, where you can go back in time and you can make a small modification, and everything is still going to end up the way that it needs to. But as soon as you start making enough alterations, it is no longer that same time stream. You've created your own time stream.
Wow, that is super literal.
So then I guess you could take it even further. If the water of the dam got backed up enough, it would find a new path around.
Exactly. But it just got me thinking about the different types of time travel that we've seen in sci-fi, because we have seen a lot of different time travel. So I was just thinking we could go through, talk about, the kind of three major ones and our issues with it and how it works. So the first one we have is the Single Continuum, which means that everything that has happened in our present has already happened in the past. So if you want to go back in time and change something, that thing has always been changed. So
this is my favorite version of it.
So if you think of like the movie Interstellar, and all the things that are happening to Murph are caused by Matthew McConaughey in the future. All right.
I have only seen that movie once, so I'm.
It's enough to break your mind.
Yeah, but I've seen one of yours many times. So.
Yeah. Is it Bill and Ted?
No.
Oh.
I've only seen that once as well. Back to the Future.
Yeah, I thought Bill and Ted. So aside from just being a hilarious movie, is a really good demonstration of the Single Continuum, because they'll be in a bind and they'll say, dude, we'll just steal your dad's keys in the future and put them behind this bush, and all of a sudden the keys are behind the bush.
I love that.
So everything that they do in the future happens in the past, so that way they can,
right, so that they can,
I think that one's personally the best demonstration of the Single Continuum.
Hmm.
But I don't know if you guys had any other certain
And
ones that
Back
you want
to
to
the
bring up.
Future, you said was because I guess it's the same. So basically, in this continuum, you're not really breaking anything.
No,
You're just
the
changing.
future can't be changed because the future is whatever the past determines it to be.
That
Right.
that event, basically, of you
Mhm.
going back in the past, is the past.
Yes.
Yeah, I really personally like that
Hmm.
because it makes sense, and like I think Doctor Who does it a lot like wrong a lot of ways because you can't, if you go back and you change the past, you can't still be affected by something that you've changed. Like if you go back and you like kill Kyle's mother, Kyle isn't gonna be here and affect my life to make me personally angry at him so that I go back and kill his mother so he's never born. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's the
Because
grandfather
Yeah.
paradox.
right, exactly. And it's confusing and
Yeah.
also like I had it, yeah,
So,
because it takes away my motive for wanting to go back and
mhm.
kill his mother, and there's no reason
I,
for me to go back and
I
do that
still don't know
anymore.
why Kyle's
Kyle's
been
mother's
singled
a
out. I
really
would have been
nice
shocked if it was like
lady.
mine. I would have been like,
There-
okay, yeah, that tracks.
Therefore, I don't go back and kill his mother,
Mhm.
and then he lives again. So then I go back and kill his mother. Like it's an
Yeah.
never-ending paradox that doesn't make
So,
sense.
yeah, it's commonly referred to as the grandfather paradox, where if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, you don't exist. You never grow up to kill your grandfather. So,
Right.
when I had been thinking about that, I was thinking, I'm like, there's technically this interdimension then that these kind of things exist in, because as soon as you commit the act of, committing the grandfather paradox by killing your grandfather, you now exist and don't exist at the same time. You kind of live in this world between worlds where you can interact with stuff, but you're not there.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Is that a lead-in to something, Chase?
Nope,
Or?
that's just my
Okay.
personal thought. I was just like, you simultaneously exist and don't, so you can interact with the world around you, but you're
It's like
not
a
there.
Schrodinger cat. Schrodinger's
Yeah,
cat.
Yeah,
that's really
Scenario.
exactly. Time travel, man, it's confusing stuff.
Yeah, travel kind of breaks my brain.
Hmm.
So you're saying that the Star Wars world between worlds would fall into this single continuum as well?
Yeah. So
Because
if we think about
At
it,
least
like,
that's how Joa presented it.
well, and I
That's
think
how
that's
Joe
how
presented
I
it.
think that's how they present it too. When Ezra goes back to save Ahsoka, Ahsoka has always been saved in that moment. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
but yeah, then we're talking.
it's
Go ahead.
I mean it makes sense from a Star Wars perspective too, like the worlds in between worlds, the world between worlds, that one, like is like Force time travel, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense that the Force invented time travel in order to do the Force's will, which in that case was rescuing Ahsoka Tano?
Hmm.
Like, like it's always been that, like that's what the Force's goal was. So I don't know. Like, there's no going up and messing up the Force's will with
Mhm.
a time portal because the Force is the
All
one
is
that,
as the Force wills it. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, and then this goes back, like Kyle mentioned, Joa's theory when we did that. His theory of the child in The Mandalorian is Baby Yoda, which Joa has me completely sold on it. I argued this quite a fair amount in our last Mandalorian recap live stream, that this child is Baby Yoda, and I'm convinced that this stream of events where he gets brought to Ahsoka uses the world between worlds to bring him to the past where he grows up to become Master Yoda, and because of that he has the foreknowledge to know, okay, Ahsoka's the one who saves me, this is why I have to send Plo Koon out to find her and then train her and pass her on to Anakin as an apprentice, that way she gets to this point.
This is kind of varying off of that, but I kind of presented an add-on to his theory because if the Mandalorian has to go to the world between worlds, and there's this cloning factor where they're hoping to get, midichlorians into, well, I guess the theory is that Moff Gideon wants to be force sensitive, so I kind of piled onto that, and I'm buying what Joe is saying, but also saying that it's the Mandalorian that gets the midichlorians, and he goes back and actually is the one who he doesn't create the dark saber, he just brings it. And it, what's his name, Tar Vizsla? No,
Pre.
Freeze?
Pre Vizsla, thank you. And just goes back 1,000 years, and he lives there too. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah.
What else were we talking about?
Interesting. I don't know.
I love Joe's theory, by the way. It's
Yeah, I agree. It's just
beautiful.
wacky enough to work. I think that's all I have on this subject. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to talk about or any other
On the subject of the single
of the single
continuum, or on-
continuum. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
No, the whole topic. That's it. Live stream.
I was
over.
gonna say that was really quick, Chase. I thought
Thanks
you
for
said-
joining us, guys. Bye. No, just the single continuum.
Okay. I'm trying to think of other ones that would fit into there, and I'm not quite
Did Back to the
sure.
Future have a single continuum?
It does, because when he goes back in time and he changes something and his brother erases from the picture, so he has to make sure that doesn't interact. But then, if you remember from the second movie, when he goes back to 1955, he has to avoid interacting with himself because he didn't interact with himself in the first movie.
That
So
I
it's,
disagree
how do you just explain?
because, like, that whole movie played with the grandfather paradox of him going back and like seducing his mother so that he never existed.
Yes.
Like it altered his existence to
So,
because like
the-
as
the
He started
reason
to fade.
like
the
he
reason-
started fading away.
the reason I put this in
And you got a
single point
new
continuum is
truck.
because his present is constantly affected by what he does in the past. It's a simultaneous thing.
okay.
Well, then I think Doctor Who should be there too.
Well,
Well, I mean, I think we'll.
I was actually kind of there with you, Ezra,
Okay.
About Doctor Who, because I feel like they try to do that, right? It feels like there's a single story. You never see events change. Doctor Who just refers to the events changing, right?
Yeah.
But you never see any.
So.
You never see any real impact of that. So go ahead, Chase.
I don't want to like cut you off, but the reason I have that one, so we're going to talk about fixed points continuum. The brief rundown on that is that characters can change the history, but not like a set major plot point of history. So the example that they gave is the Fires of Pompeii episode. He can't go back and stop the eruption of Pompeii because Pompeii is a major event. But the reason I don't have this as a single continuum is because there are several times where we see the Doctor go back and interact with himself. So Marty is not able to interact with himself because it creates I don't want to say a paradox, but we don't see him interact with himself, so he can't interact with himself. He can never go back and change that. Because otherwise that would have had to happen when you saw him earlier. Whereas
Okay.
the Doctor
So-
has gone back and saved himself on missions before. In fact, we had a
I'm
Doctor Who
supportive. Okay.
special where there was 3 Doctors in the same episode.
Maybe I should save my concern for later.
Go ahead.
Because we haven't talked about So I mean, you have like time paradoxes as
Mhm.
a notable time travel theory mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like that Back to the Future falls under that because what is the negative effect if Marty goes back and talks to himself?
The issue is because Marty is in a single continuum, he cannot go back and talk to himself. Because
Yes.
otherwise, in the first time when he was back there, he would have had to talk to himself. And because that
Yes.
never happened, he can't go back and affect that timeline.
But let's say he does.
Then you're no longer in a single continuum. You become...
but doesn't Doc talk to himself?
Exactly. Which is why he's not in a single continuum. I'm confused because there, if it was a single continuum, it would be that not that he can't go back and talk to himself, or that he shouldn't, right? It's that he doesn't. The wording is different. So if that was even a possibility, that he could go back and talk to himself, then the doc wouldn't have mentioned, don't go back and talk to yourself. The fact that it's a possibility means that he's not in a single continuum.
Mm.
If there was a possibility that he went back
Mhm.
and talked to himself, it would create a time paradox. Hence why he's not in a single continuum. But if he was in a single continuum, then he just wouldn't. He just doesn't, rather. He doesn't talk to himself. There's no way he does, because there's only one single continuum. There's no choice between, like, oh, like in an alternate universe, I go talk to myself, and in this universe, it's not. It's one single continuum. Therefore, he does not talk to himself.
I'm trying to find a way to argue it, but you're putting it so logically that I can't.
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
Pretty solid.
I agree with Bill and Ted. I agree with Interstellar. I agree with Star Wars. Back to the Future is not single continuum.
So then what do you have that as a fixed point continuum?
I would have it is time paradox. Well, I don't know.
I think
what to
time
call it.
paradox kind of falls under, because the time paradox is caused in a single continuum if
Yes,
you break the
I
single continuum.
I would say that he's in a fixed point. I don't know. Okay, so I guess we're gonna have to talk
Doesn't Doc
about that
Brown
because I
talk
don't.
to himself in
No, I'm
But
I'm-
that's
ready
that-
to. I'm entirely ready to actually agree with you, because now I'm thinking about the second movie, and he goes to the future that's caused by him going to the past, and then goes back to correct it. So
But I'm just
it's
thinking
probably
that-
he's probably technically in an infinite alternative, right?
So, yes.
So he goes back and fixes the past, so that way Doc
Yeah.
Doc doesn't die, but now in the future, Biff basically runs the world. So he goes back in
Yeah.
time to correct it, so that way Biff no longer runs the world with the Farmer's
I
Almanac.
Think I would tend to agree.
So
with
it's an
that.
infinite alternative
Mm.
instead of a
Farmer's
single point
Almanac.
continuum.
So Josh, Doc
Mhm.
can go back and talk to himself because how am I gonna put? Because he did.
And nothing
Um,
happened, like it didn't create a paradox. or
Right,
anything when it
exactly.
happened.
But because Marty went back to back in the past,
Because Marty
did-
was
and
talking to his
did-
future, would have been him already time travel. He'd be talking to the Marty that already had time traveled, whereas Doc was talking to the original, like, time, like, the original Doc from that period.
right.
Is that
so
what you're saying?
I was getting there.
Mm.
Marty. Marty went back in time, right, in the first movie.
Yeah,
In the first movie, we don't see him talk to another future Marty.
right.
So therefore, if he went back in time again and saw himself, he couldn't talk to himself, or that would create a paradox or another alternative timeline. Hence why he can't or shouldn't do that, because that would be bad. But Doc
Yeah.
can do it because he's not talking to.
Because he's wearing plot armor?
Because the Doc that talks to him is in the second episode. So the first episode, that Doc sends Marty back to the future. The Doc from the 50s
Because
sends Marty to the future, but he never has a conversation with the future Doc. But in the second one, he does have a conversation with the future Doc.
So the future Doc goes back to the past and talks to the Doc that we saw in the first movie. And we know for a fact that he altered a timeline. Because this is my point. Like, if we saw Doc we saw Doc in the moment that Doc went back to talk to Doc, then that would change the timeline, right? But if we didn't see that, there's no way we can prove that didn't actually happen
In the first one,
in the first one.
like, I guess, except it didn't get. If it did happen, it didn't get screen time. Is what you're saying?
Exactly. So if it didn't get screen time, there's no way to prove that didn't actually that didn't happen, you know?
Yeah.
So the reason that that Marty can't go back and talk to himself is because we know that Marty didn't talk to himself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Therefore, if Marty that would change the timeline. That would change something and make either a paradox or an alternate timeline, right?
The way you say change makes it sound so bad.
Well, that's basically what Doc is telling him, right? Don't go talk to yourself because that
Yeah.
would change the future, and that that would change the outcome, and that would be bad, right? That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Is that it would be bad?
Yeah, I mean, in that one we hear it will be bad. We don't really know what would happen. I guess
So
in Doctor Who we hear the same thing, but we know what would happen because that happened in one episode, right? Rose meets herself, and then they fight like these monsters from another dimension.
yeah, which like doesn't make sense to me because why?
Yeah, well,
Like what?
that's a lot of stuff in Doctor Who, though.
What's the reason? Like, what's the reason that I can't go back to
Fun.
my past self and tell myself? Like I personally agree. If there was time travel, I personally believe that if there was time travel in real life, it would operate under the single continuum, kind of theory.
Yeah.
Because so there is a reason why I can't go back and talk to my past self, and it's because I didn't. You know what I
So-
mean?
Yeah.
Unless your future self comes and talks to you in the future. Like if tomorrow, future
Yeah,
Ezra
that's what
comes and
happened
talks
with
to you,
Biff, right?
Exactly.
Biff went to his past self and gave him the almanac.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
know
then
what?
future
But-
Biff would have never been able to do that because he would have already. It's the grandfather paradox, right? Because if future
Exactly.
Biff goes back and gives Biff the
Well-
almanac, then past or future Biff never was poor. He always was the rich Biff.
And that's why I'm arguing that it's not a single continuum, because
Right.
single continuums, in theory, cannot have grandfather paradoxes.
My question then is, at what point in the timeline are we looking at this from? Because if we're looking at it from his perspective at the end of episode 3, where all this has happened in the past, it still technically maintains a single continuum. Because all of that did happen in the past. In Marty's past. And it means his present, all of that has already happened. If you're looking at it
I
from
see what you're saying.
the
Yeah.
first episode, then yeah, technically the second and third episodes don't fall under the single continuum.
So
Only
yeah,
only the events of the first episode fall under the single continuum.
okay, but in the first episode,
Hmm.
we see him like start to influence the past,
Yep, which
And the-
changes his present
right? But why would it?
because it's
Why
single
would it-
continuum.
No, because what ended up happening with Marty's parents?
They got back together.
So would Marty start disappearing?
No.
Why would he start disappearing? Because in the single continuum, he goes back, right?
Hmm.
Maybe he starts seducing his mom. Maybe there's like something there. But in the
Something bad
end,
going on?
in the end, his parents get back together, so therefore he exists. So why would he start phasing out of existence? It's like it's cause and effect over and over again.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
a paradox,
that's why
yeah.
it's confusing. But if I'm like having a hard time like speeching.
No, this is
Speeching.
deep
If
stuff.
it wasn't a single continuum, if it was a single continuum, then he wouldn't have started disappearing. That's my point. I don't know if you understand or
Hmm.
if that makes sense. What does Joa have to say? He's been talking a lot.
I think he's talking
Yeah.
about Doctor Who stuff.
He says that your mic's a little low.
I had already fixed that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then he said that, like in Doctor Who, Twice Upon a Time, and the first and 12th meeting isn't shown in the original series first episode, but
Ooh.
is shoehorned in off screen.
So what are we thinking here? Because I'm really curious to see like
I don't know where it fits. I don't feel like
Yeah.
now it fits in the single continuum.
I feel like it probably
I
has to
also
be
don't know
alternate.
that it, But I don't know if it is.
The issue is,
Well-
at least we see two different presents,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it has to be an infinite alternative.
it's confusing too, cause like, yeah, I think so.
I think if the present, like both times it showed us Marty's family, if it had showed us the same thing both times, it fits into Single Continuum. But because we technically saw two different
'Cause
presents, like not even talking about the future that we see, the two presents that we see are different. So
yeah,
it has to be infinite alternative.
I
yeah.
guess, yeah. That's the only one that would make sense.
Because if we want to go on to talk about fixed points, you arrive. I guess I don't know how to describe fixed points anymore then.
Why
Because you
did they
can
go?
you just can't change major historical events.
Why did they go to the past in the first place?
And the first one, because
Yeah.
the doc got shot.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's your proof right there. That's not a single continuum.
Is it?
No, wait.
Because he always had the body armor on. Because
You're
he
right,
always
you
went to
said
the
body-
past.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. So Marty's like understanding of how time works his isn't actually correct, and hence he's trying to go back and fix something that isn't really broken. Like I'm trying to like
Well, he was trying to escape getting shot at, and he
Yeah.
got drawn into the past because of where he didn't intentionally set the time on the DeLorean to be 1955. Because remember, he was surprised when he found out he was in 1955.
Yeah.
So he was just trying to get out of a dangerous situation where people are shooting at him. And it
Yeah.
brought him to the past. And then he had to try and find a way to get home.
get home. That's
And
right.
when he was talking to Doc, he's like, Doc, there's something you gotta know. And Doc's like, I don't want to. So it was never his intention to initially go back and try and save the Doc.
If it was a single
That's true.
continuum, he wouldn't care whether he knew, because
And he
Unless
didn't.
he had his own theory on time travel that was wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
But ultimately he didn't because he still read the letter and still wore the body armor.
yeah, no, okay. I still think I think the disappearing hand thing in my imagination is enough to disprove it as a single continuum.
I'm fine with switching it to infinite alternative.
Okay.
And
Well-
decisions being made. This is an important day.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is, I mean, historic.
Yeah.
Ezra had a logical point. History is made.
Yeah.
History for geeks has been made today.
All right. Well, do
Um,
we want to move on to fixed point?
Yeah, let's move on to it.
So, fixed point, I touched on it briefly. Characters can change history, but not the major historical plot events. So, the thing I read about this was the Novikov self-consistency principle, which is big fancy words for saying you can't kill Hitler. So, it talks about if you go back in time and either try and, raise Hitler right, so that way he doesn't murder a ton of people or start World War II, something is going to happen and the universe is going to correct where Hitler still becomes that man. Say he gets into art school, that's great. There's something else that still causes him to become a terrible dude.
So it's kind of like going on like the predestination kind of principle that like
Yep.
we're all determined who we're going to be when we're born.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Because everything in your life could change, but you'll still end up at the same point.
Right.
Which
So if somebody went back to the
So it's
past
saying a
and
person is
and-
impossible
and
to change
they-
who they really
they
are.
basically convinced Josh to never love Star Wars, Josh is still going to end up being Josh.
Or at least change who they are in a moment in time. Like, if
Yeah.
they change in 1955, they're always going to change in 1955. Like,
Yeah.
You can't go back to 1945 and change them.
Yeah. That's my
Yeah.
understanding of it. So not Josh, Kyle, you put one on here for fixed point. Do you want to talk
Quantum
about it?
What's that? Quantum Leap?
I thought you
I
put on Pandorica.
Oh, so yeah, I just had an issue with the Pandorica here because Doctor Who always talks about fixed points in time. Like that's
Yes.
the big
Yeah.
that's the big bad. But then I feel like they get a little paradoxical with this opening of the Pandorica because we don't get a solid explanation. So the Doctor goes into the Pandorica where he can't really get out, but then he also saves himself, like the future him saves himself, and there's no explanation for how there could have been an alternate Doctor, that not an alternate but another version of himself that could go back and open the Pandorica. So I feel like that's also paradoxical and not just fixed point. That's all,
Yeah.
because
Well,
it doesn't stick within the show's own stated rules.
I don't know that
we...
I've seen opening of the Pandorica yet, so I'm not sure of that episode. Is that a
That's a Matt Smith episode.
Matt Smith? I just started Matt Smith, so I haven't really probably got into it.
So are we saying that time loops, time paradoxes, and the butterfly effect are all their own category?
I
Or
just
they
thought
just-
I don't like those are things I didn't know where to place them, but they're very important in the idea of
Gotcha.
time travel because
So-
the butterfly effect, it comes down to, the if you throw that one stick into the time stream and other sticks catch to it, it eventually builds that dam by itself without you putting
Yeah.
it there. So
Which-
Right. I mean, ultimately, the butterfly effect, that one is the theory about a tornado, like a butterfly
Yeah.
that's not...
a butterfly flapping its wings in Arizona causes a tornado in China.
Right, exactly, thank you.
Yeah. I don't know why those are the two places I picked. They just happened.
But you
think-
knew where I was going.
Yeah.
Those are more like elements within
Yeah.
a theory.
That's why I have them here, not as their own
Yeah,
things. They're
okay.
just the notable time theory mentions.
Gotcha. Because I was confused by that originally. Anyway,
Mhm.
because like time paradoxes definitely exist within
Yes.
fixed points, and maybe even alternate realities.
I don't think it can exist with an alternate reality.
Yeah, I'm not sure it can exist in a single continuum either.
You think it's only a fixed point thing?
I think it's only a fixed point thing,
Yeah.
and I feel like a time loop. Oh, that's definitely. That's not like, it's not even an element to any of these.
It's
No, who
It's-
determines to put something in a loop?
yeah. So the way
the
that
writers.
Marvel describes it is it just kind of happened because of quantum garbage. And I hate that explanation, but it
Always
happens.
Quantum garbage.
It's always quantum garbage. But if you think about like Groundhog Day, I would consider that a essence of time travel because time is still passing for Bill Murray. He retains that knowledge when he gets looped back over himself. So he's technically traveling through time.
There was a time loop episode too in Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Where
There was
they
a time loop episode in Next Gen too, wasn't there?
There was.
Yeah.
I feel like basically anything that talks about time travel always has some kind of time
And
loop.
Voyager. Voyager had a time loop.
It's not really like a time travel specific element, although it is. Like,
Yeah, that's why I put it in. I feel like
No,
it's a
I
notable
agree with it.
mention. Yeah.
I agree with it being here. I just like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we kind of skipped over your third one, Chase.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's
Well,
my bad.
do
I
we
keep
want to talk
jumping
about
around the list.
the quantum leap one as well in fixed points?
Sure. I didn't actually haven't seen Quantum Leap, so
I haven't either.
I was just throwing it out there. I wasn't really sure where it is, because
Is that the one with Scott Bakula?
that's the one with Scott Bakula, where he goes back in time and course corrects things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But again, that's... Sorry, go ahead.
I don't remember like nearly enough of that one to give an opinion, but I'm pretty sure you're right in putting it under fixed points.
Yeah, I can't really remember the rules. I know he's supposed he
Yeah.
can't. This is a weird one. So I think it is fixed point because he's not allowed to travel outside of his own timeline. So any years that he's been alive, as a baby up until
Mhm.
Mhm.
maybe when he dies, maybe he can go
Yeah.
ahead. That's it. And he is allegedly like trying to just fix things. And there are things that need to be fixed in the time stream. And once he fixes them all, he can go back home.
Hmm.
So I think it's fixed point.
Yeah.
And the other thing is nobody knows it's him. Everybody just sees the person oh, that's right. He jumps into someone else's body too.
Oh, so he's not just jumping times; he's jumping into someone's body or consciousness.
Right. Um, So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
That's a
I
weird
feel-
one, but I just think it's a fixed point.
So my question is, and like what happens if you do the things in time travel movies or time travel TV that they say you can't do? And Doctor Who explains it sometimes, right? Like sometimes there'll be a time paradox,
Mhm.
or sometimes it's the butterfly effect, where the consequences of that action
Mhm.
cause irreparable damage, right? And so it's just sometimes they don't explain it though. And like I feel like Quantum Leap was one of those ones where it's like, well, yeah, he can't do this or can't go over there, which like why? Like why? What will happen? I don't know. That's always my thing. Like
I think they always describe it as, it will tear the space-time continuum and it will create a black hole that eats up everything.
yeah, and
Like,
it's like
That
but why?
seems to always
Really
be their
bad
excuse.
things.
I know
Really bad
it's
things is why.
Because
And-
plot.
Plot armor.
That's kind of what I wanted to have, like, the part of this conversation is, like, if one of these had to exist in real life, which one do you think it would be? And that's kind of why I think it has to be a single continuum.
I'm on board with single continuum or infinite realities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I
say
think
infinite
single continuum makes
alternative or-
more sense.
I just think fixed point doesn't make sense to me.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like in anything.
Like,
Because
you can't go back and, like, change Hitler. Because Hitler has always existed. But who determines that he is a major history event? So, say
Right.
they stopped somebody worse than Hitler. Like, what is determined about Hitler? What is determined about the First and Second World Wars in general that you can't go back and stop those?
Bible prophecy.
Why can't somebody go back in time and stop coronavirus from existing in 2019?
yeah, and I
What
think
what determines the fact that the history we are experiencing now is a major plot point for history? Like,
That's
who?
What's to
why-
say the
That's my
government
answer.
doesn't have time travel and they've already
Yeah.
deemed this the safest, best course, the path that we've taken. Maybe
That's
they
why-
went back and looked at taking out Hitler.
Two
and they're
hundred
like,
fifty
"No,
thousand
actually, this is
American
safer."
deaths seems pretty bad to me, though. Like,
so, and
But
this is
maybe
why
there's worse.
I think either like it is single continuum,
Mhm.
or it's time travel doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Because if
it
time
doesn't.
travel exists,
No, I
someone
think
would have
it's-
tried to kill Hitler or tried to stop the coronavirus or tried
Yeah.
like it.
I think the
So-
idea with the fixed point basically is if you try and kill, so maybe Hitler wasn't initially Hitler. Somebody, and Joa mentioned this in the chat, somebody always takes up that mantle and fills in that gap in history. So, like, it's saying you can't
PowerPoint
avoid
gets
you
created.
can't avoid the Holocaust. You can change the name of whoever causes the Holocaust, but you can't avoid it. I guess it's technically fixed point.
Yeah, I suppose.
Joe
Yeah.
says he thinks it's a time travel concept because writers don't want to bother coming up with an alternative reality. So,
Yeah,
fixed point only exists because we're lazy.
I agree because
Yeah.
it's lazy writing.
Hmm.
It's and exactly why like my point with why can't we do that thing?
Mhm.
And it's never a good reason. It's lazy writing. It's
Yeah.
because they don't have any way of stopping the character from doing that or wanting to do
Mhm.
that because because they don't want to come up with like a reason why not.
Yeah.
Like they want it, yeah. Or they don't want to come with like an alternate reality where this thing doesn't
Mhm.
happen, because like that's a lot of work.
I agree.
Like here, I want like write a 500-page essay on like what happens if Hitler never existed. Like, where do you even start with that one? Like,
Yeah.
You'd have to do a lot of research
yeah.
to find out who was when Hitler ran
Well,
or
and-
when he was voted
it was-
into becoming the
and-
dictator. Who? the next
Judging
in
by
line.
the events
So-
caused by Germany, there was clearly a lot of anti-Semitism.
yeah. And either way, like whether you try to write it like, okay, someone takes up his place, you got to figure out who that's going to be and what they're going to do.
Mhm.
Or if you're like, well, it just never happened, like how is the world going to be affected now? That's
Mhm.
a lot more research to do. Like,
Yeah.
try to figure out
Yep.
Yeah.
So what about your third one, Chase, which we've talked about a lot, but you haven't really talked
Yes.
about the specific ones that have
So
taken this.
infinite alternative is the idea that it pairs in with like parallel universes or alternate universes. Every choice you make splits off a parallel universe. So the big talk point on this is in Avengers Endgame when the Hulk goes to the bald lady on top of New York, and she's like, "Well, you can't take the time or the time stone out of this because it you create this line that goes up instead of going straight." And so he says, well, you can just return it, and then it bends back down, and now it goes back here, and so you get two lines that are kind of like this. And that's where you get the quantum realm. You can use the quantum realm to pass between the two timelines. So that's the basic one on that. So if you go back in time, you create a different universe from that point. So there's a universe where half of us are still dead from Thanos' snap, and then the alternate universe, which the Avengers just created, that now they're living off on this branch where they saved the world, even though the world never got saved from that initial timeline.
So
And they just chose which timeline they wanted to live in. Go ahead, Ez.
I have issue with this too. And I just like, so you know that that every choice you make creates an alternate timeline.
Mhm.
So who's to say that you're supposed to be the timeline that kills Thanos, or is the one that, like, exists with half the people in the world? Like, why? Like, so we have to make this timeline where Thanos dies. Like, why though? It's gonna exist either way. Like,
Yeah.
you just might not be the one in it. So what does it matter? Like, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Except
oh
your own
great,
personal motivations.
so you save the day, but like there's still like a million other timelines where everyone's suffering. So like, are you gonna go
Exactly.
and fix all those timelines too?
Yeah.
Or
And
I
again,
don't know.
kind of without spoiling, I don't want to spoil it. I don't know if you guys watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I haven't watched it.
But yeah, in that final season, they're traveling through time, and they run into some major names from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s past. And, one of the characters is supposed to be dead, and they choose to save him. So now you're creating this alternate timeline where these characters were supposed to be dead, but now they exist, and so you're on a different timeline. And then they use the quantum realm to connect back to their original timeline, where now this guy is still technically alive, but they still left this alternate timeline, and they left one of their companions behind in this alternate timeline. So now both timelines are gonna continue, but they're vastly changed from what they should initially be.
So I have another question too now, and it's like, why is it you start out in this timeline and you go to the past to change something? Why is it that you now exist in this timeline when you come back? Why don't you come back and you're still here, but you've created another timeline here?
It depends, because if you ride out time normally, so unless you're using, at least in the Marvel world, unless you're using that quantum realm to connect back to that other one, you are in this time stream, and you need to use that quantum realm to connect to the other time stream. So in theory, like, what they did is they set that other timeline on their way and then connected back to their original one.
Yeah.
So the only thing saying that you have to stay in that new timeline is the linearity of time, but then they're using the quantum realm to bypass that.
Interesting. I'm trying to come up with a question regarding Avengers Endgame now. And
I know you guys like or don't like fixed point continuums, but I honestly feel like they make more sense sometimes than this alternate thing.
Do
The
they?
alternative one. I don't know. To me, like, it's just like this. I don't really love the whole multiverse. Like, there's a infinite number of universes, an infinite number of possibilities, that kind of thing. It's like,
I don't like that you can connect between them.
Yeah.
I'm fine with them existing. I'm fine if you go back in time, it creates a new future that is completely detached from your present.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, I mean, I think that's the most easy to subscribe to.
Which one?
How, you can just have an action or two different actions and they just continue to split off.
Mhm.
I agree, Chase, that maybe there shouldn't be a way to bridge them. Like, you're just out of phase.
yeah, it's lazy writing again,
Yeah.
I think. Because I think they don't. Basically, the reason that they have always end up connecting back to their original timeline is that they don't want to deal with the changes that they've made in that timeline.
Yep.
Joa says it's more confusing, but this is his favorite, the infinite timelines. So it's like, I'm fine if you want to go back and say that, you stopped the First World War. Now you came from a world where both world wars happened, but now live in a world where neither of them did. So you have this memory and you have this knowledge, but you live in a completely different society now because of it. I think it's lazy that you're then using the quantum realm to hop back over to your initial timeline, where you, in theory, never changed anything. All you've done is create an alternate timeline. Like, you can never... I think that's probably the easy way to say this one is, you can never change your own timeline.
And I like that
Yeah.
a lot.
So
That was... sorry, go ahead.
I want to address a question or a statement Joel made, but I don't want to cut you off. So go ahead.
Well, I was kind of gonna go off on my own thing here, and I was
Okay.
gonna say
Well, should I go off on my own thing
Go.
first, or should you
Go.
go off on your own thing? Is
No,
it
you're good.
connected to Chase's thing? Because this is not.
yes.
Okay, then go.
Well, so I was gonna say, one of the first times I was introduced to a time travel scenario where you could change something in the past, but it doesn't affect your own timeline, was Dragon Ball Z, and that was, probably you guys haven't seen this, but it was when Trunks came back from the future during the Cell Saga to change his right before the Cell Saga, to change the past. He knew he couldn't change his own past, but he wanted to change the past for his friends and family. So he came back and then trained and went to the future and was able to change his present and make things better, but he wasn't able to do that in his past, which I didn't love it at first, but it's probably my preferred time travel method now, because it just makes the most sense to me. Especially if we all have our own realities. So not like you were saying, if the Marvel characters couldn't have just gone back to their own timeline, but at least they changed it for someone. It makes it more valiant in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess so. Like, Joa brought up the point. Like, if you don't try to beat Thanos, then there definitely won't be a timeline where you win over Thanos. And no, that's not true, because an alternate timeline is created by a decision, and the opposite of that decision creates an alternate timeline. So my point really isn't like, why do you even bother trying? It's like, what says that the camera or the audience is following one timeline over the other? Like, why is one timeline the prime timeline that we're watching versus another one? Like, I don't know. That's why I don't really like alternate timelines, because I don't know. It seems weird that they're celebrating that they won, that they beat Thanos, but in every other timeline they lost Thanos. Right? Like, why? What does it mean? It means nothing.
I guess one thing that I don't like from Marvel Infinity War is when Doctor Strange says that he's viewed like 69 million timelines and he only saw one in which they win. Well, then he wasn't paying attention, because in theory there are two solutions to this problem. which means in 50% of the cases you win, in 50% you lose. So he might have only looked at 69 million, but if you look at the grand, 138 million, they're going to have won 69 million of those.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
when
it
you only have
seems-
2 options, there is
a
only 2
50-50.
possible outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like that,
So,
and I
I
guess
think-
in an infinite amount of
Mhm.
timelines, there's an infinite number. But why was it all of the ones except for one that he viewed were
Did
bad
he just
outcomes?
he had to go through with this many first and then he found the one and stopped? It's not like, oh, he found the first one, which was the victory, and then watched another and he's like, oh geez, this is bad. But then like what made him only
Yeah.
view those something whatever 70 million timelines?
There's so many like that stupid like sentence. That stupid like comment was just, I don't know. silly.
Yeah.
It was silly. I don't know. I personally not a fan of how they did time travel in Marvel. However, I'm very big fan of Marvel, but I just don't like how they
Mhm.
did the time travel. I thought it was dumb.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense. But that's just me. I mean,
Yeah.
for the general audience, I'm sure it was fine. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I just personally like. I'm also just not a subscriber
Yeah.
to like infinite timelines
Mhm.
in general.
I think if you're trying to create a time travel story that's the easiest to understand, it's Single Continuum,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Well, and any other one just to me doesn't make logical sense.
Mhm.
It's not about like just this is the easiest to understand, so
Mhm.
it's like good for dumb people. I just think like the other ones are more
Mhm.
dumb in their own rights because they don't make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I feel like I'm not being like a simpleton by saying I like the one that makes the most sense.
Mhm.
I'm like I like it because it makes sense, and I don't like it the other ones because they
Yeah.
don't not based on logic. They're
Yeah.
just like based.
They're not
on
based on your
purely,
current understanding of time.
Yeah,
Like, if we understood time in a different way, but for us where it's entirely linear, where everything that has happened in the past has happened.
I
It's like-
suppose. But I more meant like with the random
know.
explanations of like why something causes a paradox and what the paradox does. And I don't know. From
Yeah.
like the biggest turnoff, and I love Doctor Who, but like the biggest like thing that I hated about that was the episode with Rose when she meets her dad, and like she touches herself as a baby, so random alien monsters come out of space and like start shooting everything. Like why? What's the point?
Mhm.
Like and what's bad with like communicating with yourself in the past? Like
Yeah.
why does that cause a paradox?
Why? It makes me think too. I'm like, why do objects spark when they touch each other from their past? If you think about Doctor Who, when they touched their sonic scooters, it was like sparking like crazy. In
Yeah.
Marvel's Agents of Shield, the kids, one of the characters' grandsons had his Swiss Army knife, and they tapped, and it was like sparking crazy. Why? What causes that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have
It's
an
just,
answer.
Like there's
Yeah.
there's no reason. It's
Yeah.
just writing. It's just plot. Like
It's like, you can't do this
that's
because
why,
I said so.
That's why I don't like it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like it.
So is that everything?
Unless somebody else can think of something else that I didn't.
Well,
put
we
on here.
briefly talked about the notable mentions, right? That's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the thing. I mean, we talked about the butterfly
We
effect,
talked about
right?
butterfly effect.
Yep,
And
we
I
definitely
think-
talked
Grandfather.
about paradox.
Yeah.
It is definitely like two different notions, like how Chase was describing how Agents of Shield did it
Mhm.
versus like how the butterfly effect works is very
Mhm.
interesting. And I liked that analogy, Chase. Like
The
if you
time, literally
throw-
the time stream.
right, and
Yeah.
like in Agents of Shield, you throw one stick in it, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But like according to the butterfly effect, if you throw one stick in, it's gonna entirely change the
Yeah.
face of everything.
That's
Which
true.
it's just I'm not sure one is better than the other, but like that's
Yeah.
just two different ways of thinking about it.
Joe
two
says he
different-
likes infinite timeline just for the fact that paradoxes can't happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, like,
Then why do so many TV shows have paradoxes? That's what I want to say, Joa.
Yeah.
I think
And-
you're not thinking that through. Clearly, the writers are.
No.
Or they're not. And again, it's just lazy writing. I think that's.
Yeah.
I think.
I think it's
Kyle's-
hard to write sci-fi. I don't think it's intentionally like lazy writing, but there's so many other factors that go into it when you're doing sci-fi stuff. I
yeah.
didn't read your entire comment.
I feel like
He's-
Kyle's being.
Paradoxes can't
suspicious.
happen or don't need to. Just the time ledges merge and split in different ways. There you go, Joa. It's entirely read.
Fair enough.
It comes to the same point where paradoxes don't happen.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, we cover time paradoxes, time loop.
Yeah.
That I mean, it's just an interesting like concept that's been
Yeah.
in everything,
hmm
and I don't know,
So-
time loop's kind of fun.
yeah, time loop happened in that last season of Agents of Shield one. They're like passing through time, and something with their time drive got messed up, and so they have to fix the time drive, and basically they had to do it 1.5 million times
Mhm.
until they got it right to
And
not be in the time loop anymore. And for some reason, okay, that's actually, here's one thing that bothers me with time loops. Why does only one person ever remember what's going on?
Yeah.
Why is it only ever Bill Murray's character from Groundhog Day? Like, are there
Yeah.
other people in different places of the world experiencing the same thing that he is, and we're just isolated in Pennsylvania?
I don't know, Chase.
that's a good question. I mean, and again, yeah, it's happened. Like, what was the episode in Voyager? Like, there was only one person that really knew what was going on, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Discovery.
It happened.
There's only
And
one person.
Same
that
thing.
knew.
I think on TNG, it was like Picard was the one that was like,
Yeah.
right? It was a
Yeah,
Picard.
and Voyager was Tess.
So like, who determines like that they're the one that I don't know. It's
It
fun,
happens in
like,
Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yes,
like,
you're right.
But
it
the
did.
the ship gets electrocuted by lightning as it's crossing the international date line, because that obviously has an impact. But then Cody is for some reason the only one that remembers it happening each time. Like,
Yeah,
what? Why him?
he wasn't struck by lightning personally. It was
No.
the ship, right?
It was just the ship. Oh.
You mean the Sweet Life on deck?
Sweet Life on, yes. Thank you for the
Very
correction, because
different.
that's vital to the story. But then, also, why are there some people that just will always believe you instantly in all of this storyline? Like, if you just say, "Oh yeah, we're stuck in a time loop," and people are just like, "Oh, chill, I believe that." Like,
Well,
what?
okay. If someone came up to you, Chase, and was like, "I'm stuck in a time loop," would you believe them?
No.
Okay,
I-
Kyle, would you believe them?
Well, if they had gone through it 6 or 7 times and learned several intimate
Yeah,
things about me that I
exactly.
had told them, and they tell me, then yes, I would believe them.
All
That's
right,
fair.
Josh, would you believe them, like right off the bat?
No, not probably right off the bat.
All right.
They would
I,
need to. They would need to
however,
prove it.
Might believe them if they had something like right off the bat to prove it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
So,
I mean,
yeah, I
if
guess
they had
I.
something right off the bat that like you told me this and you're the only and it was something only I knew, then maybe.
Yeah. Exactly. Or they like start calling out events before they happen, as seems to be the
Yeah.
comedic one that they always go with.
Yeah.
But why that one person? Why? Why them? I don't like it.
Someone's got to, or you'll be stuck in the time loop forever.
But no
No
one
one will
would
ever
know,
know.
so it wouldn't
No one
matter.
would ever know.
Yeah.
I know, and it is such like a disconnected like. Yeah, what would happen if no one knew and no one
Hmm.
corrected it? That's weird.
Yeah.
We'd never know. We would probably. It's probably that one person that's stuck. We would probably just keep going right through.
Yeah, I guess you're
Maybe we
right.
have
Yeah.
them. Maybe
So
this
it's
is
more of
our
like a
millionth time
personal-
doing this.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Is there could be a time loop ongoing right now that we just don't know about.
Mhm.
Interesting.
All right, I think
Anyway,
that's everything, huh?
Yeah. I think that was a fun conversation.
That was
Yeah.
a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
I
I
enjoyed
learned
it.
a lot.
Yeah. So, what do you think about time travel and science fiction? Do I miss any different type that we didn't talk about? If so, let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and nothing is as far away as 1 minute ago.
1.21 gigawatts?